right, so take this off. So we're going to be forging what we call a blacksmith knife. So the handle and everything's going to be integral. We're going to forge out the blade a little bit, and then I'm going to pinch down the material and draw a long tail, and that's going to get folded back over. So whenever you have these done, you don't have to put handle scales on them or anything like that. Everything you should do there. Some people don't care about that. Yesterday I forged 2 knives. This is going to take a little bit more work, so we're going to forge just the one. this down right here, you leave a gap here as you hold it and want to move around. This gives it a stop. That way that handle fits exactly where it's supposed to fit. Whenever we're towards the blade, right now, it kind of looks like this. You want to take this and gradually hold it up, create this, and then we'll forward another step up. And we'll take all this material stretched out. We want to do this handle section kind of, we'll wrap it right now before we start messing with the blade. These are the ones that I did yesterday. Whenever you're compressing a lot of the steel, you want to make sure it's nice and hot. You'll have different heats. Whenever you need to move a bunch of steel, you need to make sure it's pretty much blowing. If you are planishing, it'll be kind of like a grayish color. So, whenever we're recording the knots, when we create that notch right here, that gives you this when it's all said and done. If you don't do it that way, you have to pull this out later. But by default, I have this little wedge, I create this little upside down chef mark right here. That gives me this needle by default. It saves you a lot of time. These things starting off as that same size piece of steel. This right here. Look for it. Grab, hold it and all that. So it's a 50-inch work. Steel tie. That's high carbon. So 15-inch 20 is the, you look at Damascus, the shiny steel Damascus is 15-inch 20. It's got that nickel content. And then you'll have the dark steel, yeah, that's the shiny steel. A lot of people don't think this, but 15 and 20 is fantastic knife steel. It has to be, because it's in Damascus knives. And that goes across the edge all the time. A lot of chef knives are made out of 15 and 20. All your saw wheel blades are 15 and 20. If you will, if you leave it out in the water, yeah. It's a little more corrosive resistant than regular high carbon, but yes, eventually. So now I need to compress this back section in. This is an important step. You want to go onto the horn, on the round side of the hammer, and compress it down just behind the end. What's important about that is whenever we compress it on the horn, it takes this in and it mushrooms it. So it pushes this material out. If I was to just come in here on the anvil and try and compress that down, what's going to happen is the part that the hammer touches and the part that the anvil touches is going to stretch more in the center. You're going to create a V, what we call fish lips. I want that to paint the butt later. So you come onto the horn of the anvil and the round side of our hammer, flat side, round side, compress it just behind the end. It will mushroom that out and let us draw it out the rest of the way we want to kill. Saves you a lot of time 75% done, and then we're going to forge on our blade, get all that material where it needs to go, and we'll finish stretching after that. We just want to do a lot of that compression while we still have a lot of heat in the other areas, because what's going to happen is when you start smacking the hell out of the steel, it's going to move everything every other direction. So you want to keep as much of that base there as possible. And the handle area on this is the most movement that happens. Now, hang it off the edge again. We'll get it off about half an inch, maybe. There are little knots going. Pressed it like that, and they go in and grind off a little sliver, I bet I could probably stretch this material for this long if I really wanted to. And I have to be mindful of that. You don't need it to be too long, but let's say the hair is too long. I'll just put the guard, this piece right here, I'll just waste that material in here, make it longer, and cut it off. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to take that tail and I'm going to move it out of the way a little bit and really create that section. This actually is pretty much how it's going to be, other than a little bit of velvet wrap. Okay. All I'm doing is I'm taking and I'm raising my tongs up. And I'm just getting that material out of the way. Hang my blade off the anvil. Material out of the way so that as I come in here and hit this, it's up out of the way. It's out of my way. So I'm going to crunch that down just a little bit more. I want to make that to where it's almost square, so same height, same width. And then we'll taper that out just a little bit. We'll stop messing with the tail. We'll go ahead and start forging our blade and get that material where it needs to go. This is going to be a drop point, so what's going to end up happening is the blade profile is actually going to be closer to that blade profile right there. So it's going to sweep up just a little bit more. That makes a really good look in.
What's the best way to square a piece of stock?
So if you're going to square it, I mean, like right now, I'll have it a little off. Again, coming in, hammering on the side, cutting out. As I'm doing this, I've got a rectangle. I just need to square it out, come in, flat. So like, it was slightly taller on one side. All I'm doing is just hammering at a different angle. As we go, even smoother than that. Now, this is where having the proper anvil and having the thought process going that you can recognize. So, with my anvil, I have a slightly different round on this than I do on this. This is about 1/8 of an inch. This is about 1/4 of an inch. And then this radius is a little bit more as I go. So whenever I want to clean up any of these transitions, I just know where I need to position it on the anvil to get that right radius that I want. But whenever I go through and I clean up my edges, I always radius them slightly different depending on the process that I'm trying to accomplish. see right now, we have our steps. How we want this. Now we're going to work on our blade. We want to leave that pretty thick right now. You can always, whenever we are moving that section, that tail, it's not going to do anything to anywhere else. It's such a small amount of material to adjust the move that it doesn't confuse the rest of the steel. So we can get this blade forged to about 85% done. I would consider this about 85% done. You know, I can still do a lot more forging than that. That's still more forging than you see a lot more times. But for me, I want to get it to where all I got to do is do the minimal amount of grinding possible. And nobody's trying to sit at a grinder for 4 hours doing that.
Why were you making quarter turns that last part when you were working that last piece?
So with the quarter turns, I really wanted to get it square, and it's a lot easier than just do your turns like that, work it down. You saw what I was doing right before that. I was doing full length, full length, full length, full length. Whenever I get to those quarter turns, I'm just fine tuning little spots, boom, 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 and it's a lot easier doing this than it is trying to rotate, rotate, rotate. You do a lot of rotating when you're forging in eights. A whole lot. But for me, if I'm forging, whenever we go to start forging out that tail, you're going to see me do a lot of it. That'll be a lot of bang, 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 just pull that out. Because all I'm going to try and do is get that length drawn out, and then I'll square it. We're going to switch tongs. Whenever you start smithing, you'll realize that your hands are willing to, or able to handle a lot of really hot stuff. So I mean, that was just steaming, and I was holding it all the way up there to where it was hot enough to make the water steam. So what we're going to do on this heat is I'm just going to draw out length for switch hammers. This was a rounding hammer that we were using by 2 Basterds. This is a straight peen, cross peen. It's called a fat peen. It's a little bit broader than a normal. So that's about how narrow a lot of cross peens are. It's a lot of fat. The point behind this is it puts big broad dents that are easy to hammer out later. This puts really fine narrow dents that go really deep. Which there are moments where that hammer is useful. I have it. But for this right here, notice one of the other things is my radiuses, they're on the back here, are the same radius as my hammer. So if I'm doing what we call integral bolster knives, where on most knives that have bolsters, they have 2 pieces of metal attached to the side of them. And you do an integral bolster, you're using the steel from the actual blade, you're forging it, compressing it down. So it's all one piece right there. I do those on the anvil, and I compress from the wide piece of steel down into the blade on this section of the anvil with that. Creates a nice smooth transition. We'll probably go a little bit cooler on that now. So, straight peen. Nice even strikes, both sides. What you'll see me do as I'm forging like this, I'm moving the steel and I'm hammering in one spot. Treat myself like a power hammer. And it lets you get nice, even lines all the way across the blade. The whole point behind that is we're trying to get a little length out of it. So if I'm forging with the straight peen, which means it runs in line with the handle, we're going to draw out length. If I'm forging with the cross peen, perpendicular to the handle, we're going to get height. Right? And there's going to be a section where we're going to actually use that to do that. now, we want to get a little bit of length before we start drawing out bevels and things like that. One thing that I do slightly different than other makers is I will use my straight beam to draw out my bevels too. It's a little bit more stressful if you're not good with your hammer strikes. It's a little bit more forgiving if you use your rounding hammer because you're not putting very deep dents in there. You want to use a rounding hammer whenever you're doing that because it lets you really angle your hammer and get down into that edge. If you don't want to go to your edge of your anvil, and I'll show you what I'm talking about that here in a minute. So, for me, come in, stretch that out a little bit. We're going to focus more towards the tip. I'm not doing big swings. Thin that out. The cool part about doing a distal taper to the tip is whenever you grind it, root the forward knife and leave that texture all the way down close to that tip area. So grinding away all that texture that you're forward to that. So on this next heat, what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and forward out a little bit of height, bring that heel section down just a little bit. That'll give me where I'm at right here. So where it's kind of at this point, it will let me get a little bit more height and a little bit more up. So I'm going to take this section and I'm going to hammer it this way, bring that down. There ain't even breeze in this hallway. This is like the most stale air. That
should have set up under your fan, man.
That man's not doing that thing. Yeah, it's just there for looks. So, cross feed. Both sides. hit the face of your anvil over here. A lot of the hammers are already rounded, so you're not going to do that very much if you got the hammer control. But all I did was I just thinned out that edge a little bit. I used the round side, come in there, clean that up. Gave us a little swoop up. This is not the final profile yet. I just wanted to demonstrate that particular section. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to switch back to straight beam, and I'm going to fine tune the profile through material management versus trying to fine tune it by putting the cutting edge on the anvil, hammering on the spine, and doing that. I'm going to use my material control to get everything where it needs to go. How far along are you for so far?
You're at 140.
Got 6 minutes left. Put everything where it needs to go. I'll go ahead and I'll clean up just a little bit. We have a distal where it's forged to a taper. Bevels are forged in. I'll clean up that profile just a hair, and we're going to forge out that tail. This is the best part about doing the placement inside of knife making, is being able to make knives like this that they're all a little unique, they're all a little different. Oh yeah, okay. And it's just like fun to do this actual part of knife making. And there's no way on earth that I could have taken this little piece of steel and ground it away to make this knife. Only are able to do this with skill and talent like this. Like the extra tag on the side?
Yeah.
Well, you don't technically have to do that. But I will tell you this. If you sit there and hammer, one of the things that's going to end up happening, the hand is going to start either going numb or vibrating. Fingertips will start going numb. And so let's say whenever I'm forging out a drift, and I really got to forge out a lot of material out around, and I'm at a point where I'm keeping that heat still for a long time, and I'm sitting there and I just forge, and I keep going. By the time I go to put that back in the forge, my hand is almost vibrating, and my fingertips are starting to get numb. So maybe I want to come over here and then reset, come over, but a lot of the time, that is for rhythm.
Also, Japanese bladesmiths will tap twice to tell the striker to stop striking.
Yep. It's important to be able to have that with the rhythm, especially if you got somebody using like a 6-pound sledge or an 8-pound sledge.
Reckon ambulance.
Yes. Now we want to draw all this out. If I was trying to compress it from 1/2 inch down to 1/4 inch, or from 3/4 of an inch down to 1/2 inch or something like that, I'm trying to really push it down, I'll use the horn. But what I'm doing is I'm going like 3/8 of an inch to about 1/4 of an inch. So if I go in and I get one ridiculous blow, and I crimp it down to even more than that, it's not going to work. So what I want to do is I'm trying to fine tune a square out. So I'm using my flat side of my rounding hammer, and I'm compressing here just enough. Especially once we get down just a little bit more than this, every hammer blow is going to do a lot of work, and it's going to draw out really fast. But I will, a lot of people who want me to use the horn for
The smaller you get, better to keep a flat surface in the round.
Correct.
If you want to move metal round on round.
round on round all day. See, I probably only need that much more length to be able to wrap around and make a full-size handle. So I know that my knuckles fit right here, right in this section of this handle. So as long as I can take enough to wrap around, make it to where the end of the handle hits about right there, I'm going. I got enough for my hand to fit on it. So whenever we're forging and we're learning, where are we? Like what parts of the handle to pay attention to, where hand fits on different things, especially if you're going to try and forge to finish a knife, or you're going to try and make something super even. So like whenever I'm forging knives like this right here, I know that I can fit certain areas on my handle. Boom, right up in there. Boom, right up in there. That, I'm going to have to take a little bit out of here, and that's going to fit absolutely perfect. That one's a little bit better, and that goes right there. So whenever I'm forging out, I'm going to try and not have to remove a bunch of material later. I just have to know where on my hand mill it's going to be able to handle everything for me. Get to a point to where I want to planish that square, I want it to be cooler, and we'll trying to move a bunch of material, I want it to be super hot. If I had this just screaming hot whenever I started forging like that, with a 3-pound hammer, it's going to compress it too fast. So we're just trying to get it going. We're not trying to make it too thin where I have to try and upset something or fix it later. flatten out the area that's going to be the bolster, the guard, and then round and round. How much are you going to be able to sell it for? So, it depends on what show I'm at. So, my blacksmith knives sell for, depending on how intricate in size, $150 to $200. But I also make I do the fork and knife sets. So I'll do forged fork, twists, all that stuff, and scroll work, and I'll do blacksmith knives as well. It's all like a set. But blacksmith knives I don't really sell for very much. Yeah. Even if I'm doing one that's more intricate, that has a bunch of twists in the spine, all that, like extra work done to it, upsetting, things like that, they sell for a little more. But I would prefer that people have them than trying to gatekeep it, sell it for too much. But I mean, I say to each their own. If people can sell them for more than that, do your thing. So, round side, flatten this out. Thinning that out just a little bit more, and then we'll start moving around. And because this is knife steel, this is just going into the handle, I probably could have forged that mold a little bit longer. If we were working with mild steel will start fracturing. As you start forging it that thin, it'll just start fracturing and falling apart. That's one of the things that also sucks about forging in really thin tapers. You got to keep that stuff hot all the time. Or if you work with wrought iron. Wrought iron hates being forged on. Splitters, just, falls apart. Do our initial in this bit. And that bit, we're going to work our way up into this area. Now, you do this a couple of ways. You can either use the edge of your anvil or you can use scrolling knives. I'm going to do a little bit of both. drop forge. I'm gonna tell you right now, whenever you first start doing this, it takes a few months where you do not instinctively go, because you know you drop something just by pure, you just want to grab it before it's the ground. Just let it hit the ground.
You can always tell it's
Just let it hit the ground. I'll show this to people that are watching the live stream. And y'all, yeah, that's what we have. Full guard. Everything center. There we go. Nice and tapered. Just to think about the fact that, people have been doing this for a long time. And whenever you needed a tool, you made a tool. Before we had machines to do everything for us, if we needed a tool, you went to your blacksmith, and they made the thing for you to go do it, and they made it as efficient, as inexpensive as possible. And that right there, that's all we were able to accomplish. 15 and 20. 15 and 20. Yeah, again, for the people watching on the internets. That's it. With our guard.